So, Ann, I don't know if you saw my tweet last night, but I'm sitting there watching the NBA draft, as most, I'd say, people listening were, or at least keeping tabs on it, they were. But I was sitting there and I was like, all right, I'm watching the coverage, which, by the way, apparently this is a controversial take. I thought the coverage was phenomenal last night. I think Malika is as good of a host as we have in the business right now. She's so efficient getting in and out and setting up her analyst. I think Andrea is phenomenal. Jay Billis has been great at this forever, and JJ Redick is so insightful and good. And Monica was outrageous. She does the draft interview job better than I think anyone has ever done it in any sport, bar none. She also accidentally said organization when the Raptors pick, which I thought was hilarious. I have confirmed via text message that was an accident, but it happened. So even when she's not trying, A+, no notes. But I'm watching the coverage and in kind of killing a little bit of time, I was like, oh, I'll do some Duolingo as well because I want to, continue my French. And little did I know those things would be related. Little did I know that my pursuit of learning the French language is something that will help me communicate with the newest Washington Wizard. Well, I guess he's the second newest now because my Serbian, not very good. I don't even know if Serbian's directly a language, to be honest.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't know what language they speak in Serbia. I'm guessing it depends. It's complicated geopolitics in Serbia. I'm guessing there's some Serbian. I'm guessing there's some Russian. There's always a little bit of Russian in that part of the world. Yes. Anyway, the point is, I did not expect the Duolingo French to help me say, Bienvenue, Bilal. Bilal Coulibaly is the pick. And it was kind of in a way, it wasn't as wild of a draft as many people thought it would be. A lot of people expected a lot more movement. There's little moves like the one the Wizards made, which, by the way, no problem with it. At first, you're like, why didn't you just wait? The Pacers had their guy at 7. They were going to take him at 7. You go to 8. Well, the reason was because apparently, of all teams, Will Dawkins' former employer, the Oklahoma City Thunder, were among those trying to trade up to 7 to get Bilal Coulibaly. And so the Pacers, who also really wanted the guy that they ultimately took at 8, call the Wizards and are like, hey, we don't want to lose our guy. Who do you want? I don't know exactly whether the Wizards called and were like, hey, we hear that Coulibaly, the market's hot. You don't want to lose your guy. You want to come back just to 8 and we'll go up. We'll give you a couple seconds. Or the Pacers called and were like, hey, we heard you were interested in Coulibaly. Oklahoma City's knocking down our door. We don't want to move back that far. Would you want to trade back with us? Because if not, we're going to do the deal with them. Either way, good job, Wizards. Sacrifice 2 second-round picks in 2028 or whenever the hell they were to move back or to move up the one slot. You get your guy. And Anthony, I think this is the sign of a new era. Like, this is not the kind of pick the Wizards have made in a long, long time. This is a gigantic swing. There's a chance Coulibaly's not any good. There are folks that do this for a living year-round, that go to the international stuff, that say there is no player in this draft who has a higher or a bigger variance between his ceiling and his floor than Bilal Coulibaly. And that is the exact opposite kind of guy as Johnny Davis, as Rui Hachimura, as Troy Brown Jr. And I appreciate the fact that the Wizards are embracing this thing that I talked about yesterday, which is not caring if you win right now. Not that you're trying to be bad. You're not trying to acquire bad basketball players. What you're willing to do is take risks on guys who are not good right now. And that extends, by the way, to the trades yesterday. Last second, did you catch that they got Baldwin from Golden State?
I actually turned it off at pick 54, I think. So I don't think I saw it.
So pick 57, which they had, they flipped to Golden State. Mm-hmm. So and they ultimately complete the Poole deal by saying, hey, we'll give you this pick. You give us cash and Patrick Baldwin. Baldwin was a first-round pick last year. So when everyone's like, oh, they should trade for first, how do they not get first-round picks? It's 1 year off. Mm-hmm. He was a first-rounder last year. And by the way, I know Mr. High School Basketball. Do you know the Patrick Baldwin story?
I do not.
Well, I can give you a little bit of a preview because not my beat today will be Anthony Slater from The Athletic, who covers the Warriors, and we actually taped with him earlier, but he filled me in. And Baldwin is a guy that a couple years ago was right up there with Paolo Banchero as one of the top players in that class in the high school level. He had a really bad ankle injury in high school. It did not get rehabbed correctly. He ultimately goes and plays for his dad at like a mid-major type of school. I'm forgetting which one. It might have been UW Milwaukee, I think. Well, like, he was one of the top prospects in that high school class for a long time. The Warriors get him in, and they're like, yo, we got to fix your ankle. They help rehab him. He obviously does not play a lot last year, but he showed some flashes in games. He's 6'11", and he shoots lights out. Like, you want to talk about a guy that you take a big swing on, I'll take the 6'11 shooter, please and thank you. He's probably going to start for them. Like, unless Danilo Gallinari comes back and is just undeniably that dude again, which Gallo's had a really, obviously never lived up to being the number one pick. That he was the number one pick. I always get him and Bargnani, their draft spots mixed up. My Italians, got to keep them straight. But Gallinari's been, I think highly touted for a long time. And he's always been a very solid player. And he's had some stretches where, like, those Atlanta teams that won a ton of games a couple years ago, he was super essential for them. I think Boston missed him a ton this year. Part of the reason they go get Porzingis is because Gallo doesn't work out. So he's coming off the ACL. Who knows what he will be. But I think right now, like, there's a chance Patrick Baldwin Jr. is a starter for you. And you just kind of get him as a throw-in on the trade with Jordan Poole. And so taking these big swings is exactly the kind of thing you can do when you don't care if you win right now. Because that allows Baldwin to get minutes and experience. It allows Jordan Poole to experiment and just find out, okay, where can I go? What can I do as a primary guy? How much do I have to distribute when I kind of have the green light to take whatever shot? There is no, hey, man, you better get Clay a shot. Like, you're the shots guy now. So does he take that to an extreme, or can he play within himself and do what's best to help win basketball games? These are the things that Jordan Poole is going to have to learn how to do as a number one option. And then for a guy like Coulibaly, he probably comes in as an impact defender immediately, and you'll hear from Will Dawkins more on that next. But he can defend. Some nights he's going to get toasted because he's a rookie and he's 19 years old, and those things happen in the NBA. But he can learn and make those mistakes. And, like, I will say this. I am much more intrigued of watching this basketball team win 20 to 30 games this year than I was watching last year's plot to 35. I'm so much more interested. I said a week ago when all this stuff was really going down, I was like, I'm going to hate not being able to talk a lot of Wizards on the show because they're going to stink. Guess what? I'm not stopping talking Wizards because I think they are more interesting now than they were 2 weeks ago. Them doing this and getting to follow the pieces, the goals are different. If you bring back Beal, Porzingis, and Kuzma, you're trying to make the playoffs, and that's the standard that I will hold you to because that's your standard. I don't set the standard at this point in the process. I'm just going to evaluate it based off what it is, right? That team with Tommy and them in charge, they were trying to make the playoffs. So I was like, hey, man, this is broken. You're not making the playoffs. This stinks. This plan, it's boo, bad. Current version, win 20 games. I don't care. Are guys competing? Are guys timid, or are they, aggressive? Do they get better over the course of the season? Is there infighting, or do they get along? Does it seem like there's some accountability, even if they're losing? That's what I care about. It's not about the scoreboard at the end of the day. They're young. Who's the leader on this team? Who's the oldest guy on the roster? I can't answer that right now because, like, Monte Morris and DeLon Wright are about to get traded probably. But probably Gallinari. Like, they don't have the type of vet, and that's something else that I'm looking forward to too. Is like, in one of these trades, can they get the right kind of vets in here? That's something I was looking forward to when the trade was going via the Clippers, and Marcus Morris was on his way, and Robert Covington was on his way. But that's all this team, like, Of course, they need more talent in the long term, but like right now, just get culture guys. Get the right kind of guys in here. You've got some interesting young pieces. You don't want too many at once. See which one sticks. See which ones stick. See which ones go, and then stick with the ones that stick and let the next ones go and flip them for more assets and more picks, and off you go. I think they ultimately traded like 5 players out for 18 players or picks. Talk about a roster rehaul. Excellent job. Good couple weeks on the job, Will Dawkins. By the way, speaking of the GM, Will Dawkins, you will hear from him next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app. The Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@theteam980. So, Will Dawkins, new GM of the Washington Wizards. I think it's pretty funny that the team that's been reported that was trying to jump the Wizards to draft Bilal Coulibaly was the Oklahoma City Thunder, his former employer, because you can largely thank the Thunder for the fact that Dawkins knew Coulibaly. He went over and saw Mets 92, the team in France that both Coulibaly and Victor Wembanyama played on last year. He went and scouted them in person because that was his job at the time. He takes that knowledge with him to D.C., and ultimately they do draft Coulibaly a bit higher than a lot of mock drafts had him. So here was Dawkins last night talking about why he thought that was the right move.
The passion that you see the second you walk into the gym, he's the guy running around, positive energy. But the time we walked into the hotel room, picked him up, and then got him in the car. We like to spend like individual time with guys, get him in the car, drive around the city, take him to dinner, let him loosen up and get to know us a little bit, but also get to know him. He's a family guy. I think his mom, dad, and 2 sisters are going to be here this weekend and kind of see DC. He's excited to learn about the city. He comes from humble beginnings. Nothing was handed to him. And we had a real deep conversation on like what drives you, what motivates you. There's going to be some setbacks for all rookies. You're going to be in a different location. Spotlight's going to be a little brighter here. What's going to drive you? What's going to motivate you? What's going to push you? And are you ready for those things? And his personality is bring it on. I'm ready for it. And that's what I loved about him. And I think he'll fit it very well with the guys in the locker room. He's got an energy, a work ethic, a passion that connects and hopefully unites the group.
You know, I said in the last segment, they're probably going to win 20 to 30 games this year. And from a talent standpoint, that's, fortunately or unfortunately, probably correct. But I really like the group that they're putting together from a character standpoint. I've now had multiple conversations with folks around Jordan Poole, and like Jordan Poole's a self-made player. He was the 28th pick coming out of Michigan. He was super slight of frame, and as you'll hear Anthony Slater say in a little bit, Poole was one of the worst players in the league his rookie year. He stunk. He was bad. And guess what? He just was like, all right, I'm going to go to Steph Curry camp. I'm going to grind. I'm going to watch what Steph did. I'm going to watch how he works, and I'm going to follow his example. And ultimately, Jordan Poole turns himself into a max player, the max he was allowed to sign, the mini max, coming off of his rookie deal. It's pretty remarkable. He helped the Warriors win a championship. Coulibaly seems like he's got a grinder, work ethic mentality that is going to serve him extremely well through what will be a tough rookie season. Make no mistake about it. Like this guy was playing for the Mets 92 junior team to start the season. He was not even on the senior team, and he wasn't even the best player on that team. And this is all, I'm not scouting him, so thanks to the folks who put out all this great information over the last couple of days. I'll shout out in particular one of the guys that I was just listening to before the show, Jeremy Wu, who's a draft guru type who's on Zach Lowe's pod. And, he said he wasn't even one of the best players on that junior team, and then quickly got better and then became on the senior team. And as some people might know from Victor Wembanyama, this was a team, Mets 92, that just played in the championship in their league. And Coulibaly, by the end of it, at 19 years old, was one of the best 2 or 3 players on the team behind Victor Wembanyama. Like, his growth has happened so fast. And he's also got, like, a little bit of the Giannis thing. He had a late growth spurt. And I'm trying to think, there's a guy who was famous for this. Oh God. It's a bit of a tale as old as time in the NBA, but there's specific guys that are known for this. I just can't happen to think of any of them in the moment. But he was a guy that was closer to like 6 feet tall, very like slight guard build, very late, and then he had a massive growth spurt. So he developed all the guard skills when he was a little guy, and then now he's a big guy with guard skills, and who knows, he could grow again. Like, stature-wise, he's not that different from when Giannis came out, and that is not me saying he will be Giannis, because Giannis is a one-of-a-kind. But when you look at the frame similarity, like, can he get into an NBA weight room with NBA resources? And Giannis, you know, he was a little bit one-of-a-kind in that regard as well. Giannis went from someone who was not very wealthy, did not have resources, and was playing in like the second division in Greece for a team that also did not have money and resources. And all of a sudden Giannis had NBA resources, and he ate and he lifted and he became this dude that he is, that is a brick house that put up 50 points in the clinching game of the NBA Finals. I don't think Bilal Coulibaly is going to get that. And in part, like, he's already had access to some of this stuff because he's playing in one of the better teams in one of the better leagues in Europe. But point being, when you get older, you have time. This becomes your full-time job when you are in the American system, which demands more of that stuff. And we frankly have more knowledge in the strength and conditioning world than a lot of Europe does. We are ahead of them in that regard. They are catching up in some areas, like a lot of the top flight soccer programs in Europe are starting to catch up from a strength and conditioning side. But we are ahead compared to where they are over there. You get into that system, and how does he grow? And this is, I think, the larger point here that needs to be made. And then coming up next, we'll take calls, 301-230-0980. What have you made of the last 2 days, the last 2 weeks for the Washington Wizards? 301-230-0980. The Wizards have now put themselves in a position to do the thing that they have been the worst at the last 20 years in the league. They have to develop players. And there's no scouting that can overcome bad player development. It's just not a thing. Like, you get, as Will Dawkins called Bilal Coulibaly, a ball of clay. How do you ultimately mold them? And some players come to you partially or even fully molded. Some are going to develop into great, like, doesn't matter where Victor goes. It didn't matter where LeBron went. Those dudes were going to be great. But unless you get lucky and get one of them, you're going to have to rely on the fact that you can get the most out of the talent that's available. And that is the thing that the Wizards have to do now. They have to make it so that they get the most out of Bilal Coulibaly. They get the most out of Jordan Poole. They get the most out of Patrick Baldwin Jr. They take Denny Advia's development and turn it up, not a notch, multiple notches. That's what needs to happen if they want to develop a winner here. And a guy like Coulibaly is as good of a block of clay as you could possibly ask for with his raw athletic ability, some of the skills that he has developed as a younger player, and certainly his mentality, as you just heard Will Dawkins describe. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and you can watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. And we're taking your calls next, 301-230-0980.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.